These are the 3 criteria for the family board games on this list. Number 1, it must be something everyone can enjoy. These are family board games, not children board games. And believe me, I have a 5 and a 7-year-old daughter. I own a game called Disney Princess Enchanted Cupcakes. That game will not be on this list. Also, because siblings and even spouses can have rivalries when they play board games, there will also be no games involving player elimination or sabotage. Number 2, it must be something that everyone can play. That means that there are no games that depend heavily on reading. So even though Wingspan may be the number 1 family board game on Boardgame Geek, Wingspan is not on this list. And finally, number 3, as I was trimming down the list, I prioritized games that were more enriching. Furthermore, while party games are excellent games for families to play, I decided they felt more like a category on their own, and I omitted all party games from this list. Now, with those 3 criteria in mind, let me show you the top 10 family board games. We start at number 10 with an alternative to popular games like Catan and Ticket to Ride. I'm starting with a game that still fits the same sorts of mechanics such as gathering resources and building routes, but is a lot more skill-based, enriching, and far less frustrating. This game is Via Nebula. Via Nebula involves building a route, but instead of building it with train tracks, you're building it through the clouds, and many players can use the same route in order to pick up resources to build buildings and gain points. It's an approachable game that even my young kids can play. Also, the artwork and the components are absolutely adorable, and that makes it very inviting as well. Number 9 is the oldest game on this list. It's Sushi Go. It came out in 2013, and I put Sushi Go on here because it's the most approachable card drafting game for kids to play. Like all card drafting games, this mechanic involves selecting the best card from your hand that will suit your collection. My kids like it because the scoring is simple enough that they understand how the cards are related, and they like being able to select a strategy, like getting the most puddings or getting a bunch of maki, and really focusing on that. Even though they're young, they can actually beat their parents. Number 8 is Reef, which came out in 2018. In Reef, you play cards in order to build a 3-dimensional reef. Every card gives you 2 pieces that you can add to your reef and a scoring opportunity. The scoring opportunity is available when you play the card, whether or not you have fulfilled the requirement. So it requires you to prioritize your cards, saving cards that you know you can score until later, and getting cards that you can't score out of the way earlier so that you can build a reef to maximize your points. This is a great game because it involves very simple arithmetic. It's something that everyone can understand, and because of the element of luck in the card play, it's not as strategic as a game like Santorini, for example, which plays more like chess. This one is more challenging and more engaging, and while the younger members of the family might enjoy the tactile pieces, they'll probably need a little help in order to play the game fully. Number 7 is New York Zoo, which came out in 2020 and was designed by Uwe Rosenberg, who made Patchwork and Agricola and so many amazing games. New York Zoo is a tile placing game where players race to fill up their zoo boards with zoo enclosures and attractions. What makes the game one of the best family games, though, is the breeding phase in which the zoos all breed little baby animals. And unlike other tile placing games, which are much more abstract, which, by the way, if you were looking at Isle of Cats, I very carefully considered Isle of Cats for this list, but I ended up not putting it on there because of what New York Zoo offers that Isle of Cats doesn't. My girls love this theme and this mechanic, and they get really excited about playing New York Zoo. As an adult, I find the strategy really engaging, although for my youngest daughter, who began playing the game when she was 4 years old, I did make an accommodation where during the game, she was allowed to move her pieces after they had been placed. That isn't allowed in the official rulebook, but for a girl so young, that actually made it a lot more fun for her, and it gave her something to do while she was waiting for her turn. With that accommodation, this game fits all ages. Number 6 is Andor Family. And Our Family is actually the only cooperative game on this entire list. It came out in 2020, and in it, players work together to save a family of baby wolves. They do this by completing different missions, and the missions are different every single time. They have to complete all of the tasks before the dragon invades the castle. The thing that I like most about And Our Family is the storytelling theme and the cooperative gameplay. There's a lot of dice rolling, and it seems like there's a lot of rules. My kids didn't really bother going through the rules because they found the missions very engaging and fun. Number 5 is Mighty Monsters, which came out in 2016. Mighty Monsters is a competitive game where players compete for treasure by playing monster cards in a castle being defended by various heroes. Before the battle phase, players won't know exactly what the strength of the hero is, so there's a little bit of betting on whether or not it's going to be a strong enemy or a weak enemy, and players play cards accordingly to try to fit within the range of possibilities. If another player isn't satisfied with what some other player has placed, they can pay that player in order to put their card there instead. What I love about the game, especially as a dad, is that during the reveal phase, the monster cards are flipped over, their strength is added, and the players must determine whether the combined strength of the monsters is greater than the strength of the heroes in order to be victorious. If the monsters are victorious, then the treasure has to be split up equally. Altogether, there are several small little math problems that keep my kids thinking. And again, my kids are really young, so they really get engaged in that process. Let's reveal it, KK. Do the first one.
I want to do the next one.
Who's gonna win?
He's stronger. Wait. None of us win.
It's a tie?
Yeah, it's a tie.
Then I think the monsters win. Let me see. Now, for older kids, there's actually a lot more strategy involved about playing the cards and trying to bait somebody to pay you to replace your card. Number 4 is a game that I initially thought was going to be too strategic for my kids, but ended up going over really well. The game is Calico, which came out in 2020. Calico is another tile placing game where you score points for the arrangements in your tiles based on their pattern or their color. If the patterns are arranged in a certain way, a cat will come and visit your quilt, which my kids, of course, are really excited about. If the colors are arranged a certain way, you can get a different button. And if you get every color button, you get a rainbow button, which again, you can imagine kids getting excited about that. But then there's one more level of strategy, where you build patterns around the tiles on your board. The tiles can be switched out every game, which adds to the replay value. Now, here's where the game gets a little too much for the kids. When I played with them, they didn't consider that third level of strategy at all. They were entirely focused on getting cats and getting buttons, which is actually fine. And having played the game myself, I realized there's enough points to be earned in collecting cats that you might be able to play the entire game without doing any of the other patterns. So there's a really nice accommodation here. If you're playing with adults and young children, you can have all of the kids play and compare who wins based on just cats and buttons. You can have the adults play on another level where they're also adding that third element of scoring, and in so doing, you have 2 results. One winner for everybody, including the kids, and another winner for just the adults. Either way, this game is going to be fun for everybody.
I'm going to get this mushroom one, see? Every time you do something, you get an extra tile because every single time in the game, you need 2. So the only way how to get 2 is to keep on getting those so you can have them again and again.
Thank you for teaching me how to play. We're getting into the top 3 now, and all 3 of these games is amazing. Number 3 is Planet, which came out in 2018. Planet is a 3-dimensional game where you're placing magnetic tiles onto a globe, and that globe attracts animals at the end of every round. Every animal is attracted to whoever has a globe that has the most grassland area, or the most water area, or the most mountains that are not touching deserts, or something like that. I think it's an amazing game for spatial reasoning, as at the end of every round, I have to ask my kids, Okay, who has the most mountains? And the kids have to manipulate this three-dimensional object to count all of their mountains. The kids like it because at the beginning of the game, they pick their favorite animals and then they strategize in order to earn those animals, which is something they focus on for the entire game. And any game that involves a big objective that kids have to plan for is a huge success in my book. By the way, there is an advanced rule where players are given objective cards and scored points based on how many tiles of a certain type they can collect. Needless to say, when I'm playing with younger kids, I don't use the advanced rule and we only focus on the animals. Number 2 is King Domino, which came out in 2016 and is honestly one of the most brilliant mechanics I've ever played. The game involves bidding on both turn order and the tile that you want to place into your 5x5 grid. Players place their tiles like dominoes with similar terrain types touching each other, and at the end of the game, if the dominoes can fit in a 5x5 grid, players score based on the number of crowns in an area multiplied by the number of adjacent terrain types matching that area. So taking the score involves both multiplication and addition. So I make my 7-year-old take everybody's score, which is great for her. And it also helps kids plan for how they're going to maximize areas by taking the ideal domino. As far as accommodations are concerned, everyone in my family can play this game. However, sometimes the young one plays dominoes in such a way that they don't fit in the 5x5 grid, so we allow her to adjust in order to get them to fit back into that square. Aside from that one accommodation, this is one accessible to everybody. Number 1 is Karuba, which came out in 2016. Karuba is a game like Sushi Go where all players can play at the same time. There's one player who draws tiles and announces the number on the tile to everybody else. So everyone is playing the same tiles at the same time. They play their tile on their personal board in such a way that the explorers can get through the island and up to the treasure. If the caller names a piece that you don't need, you can discard the piece in order to advance your player a number of spaces equal to the number of exits on the tile. So the game is a race to see whose explorers can get all of the treasure first. This game is number 1 for so many reasons. 1, I love how it involves planning and how you have to accommodate for future tiles. I love how nobody has to wait for their turn because everyone's playing at the same time. I love how whichever child is most easily distracted, they can be given the job of being the caller, which keeps them a little bit more occupied. I love the decision making that's involved when you have a tile that you might be able to use or you're not sure if you should discard it and you have to really figure out, well, what's the best choice for right now. Karuba has so much going on, and the fact that I learned it, I played it with adults the first time and it went well with grown-ups. So whether you're playing with kids, whether you're playing with adults, or you're playing with your whole family, Karuba is a fantastic family game. All of these games have links in the description, and if you'd like to check out more games, or if you'd like updates on what the best deal is currently on Amazon for family games, check out theperfectboardgame.com. That's my personal site that I've coded myself in order to allow people to organize games by categories that are interesting to them and find excellent deals. Thank you so much for watching. I really think that these are the 10 best board games for families, and I've played a lot of games. But if you think I left something out or you have a recommendation, maybe something that I've never even played before, will you please let me know in the comments, because I'm always looking on building my collection and making more video content about recommendations for families and other board game players. So go ahead and drop me a comment to give me a direction on where I should go next. And I'm thinking that maybe next year I'll just update the entire list. Anyway, thanks again, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.